So I foolishly thought I knew what I was doing all the time because I'd had an involvement in building wind turbines and boilers. After we put the wind turbine in, I had done the calculations as to how much power I was going to use. And what I found, I was using far more than I expected. And one of the things that I would say to anyone who's considering this is the cheapest and most effective investment you can have is in power efficiency. Efficiency is the easiest. What you don't buy or don't need at all, that's the most profitable kilowatt hour of all. But after we had put the wind turbine in 2013, I just found that the power demand on the system was not what I expected it to be. I was using too much. So a chap from Scottish Power came in to look at my meters because I said there's definitely something wrong with this, I'm using too much power. And he came in and he said, your power factor is too low. And I would like to pretend I had known what it was at that time, but I didn't. So power factor is a measure of the efficiency of power use. And what it meant for me, and I guess for many farmers, we then got power in 1936. That's when the power came through first of all. And it came to the farm and they probably powered the farmhouse and maybe lights in the steading, and then they would get other power for other things. So it's grown like topsy over the years, and people are on grain dryers and chicken sheds and feed mixers and potato cold stores. And the traditional way to do that if you're a farmer is you phone your local electrician, you say, "Hi, Dave, I'm going to build a free-range egg unit, so I want to put another 50 kilowatt hours or kVA of demand onto the farm," and you put it on. But what that's doing all the time, if it's not considered, is it's increasing or it has the potential to reduce the efficiency. When you might want then to build a new chicken poultry unit and put on more power. The issue is, and power factor is a measure of power efficiency. So if you're running an electric motor like you find in a grain dryer or a feed mill or a feeding system, or you've lots of fluorescent lights, that's what that buzzing in the background is, then each of those things puts a constraint on the power. It's hard to explain, that's why it's difficult and why people don't address it. Fundamentally, if you run an electric motor 50 times a second, it creates and collapses a magnetic field. As the magnetic field collapses, it creates reactive power, and the more reactive power there is in the system, the more power you need to push it through. Think of it like water. Or if you've got a fluorescent light, it's got that little round thing which is called the ballast, and that acts as a brake in the system, so it means it needs more power. So what we had was a power factor of 0.2 when it's meant to be 1. And I had absolutely no idea, which meant that I needed 5 times the kVA to make my systems work when the grain dryer and things were running. And it made it hugely inefficient, and it meant I needed much more power than I did. I was wasting a lot of power. So I got in touch with a company called Energy Ace, a guy, Gary Vizard, came up and we put in power factor correction. So the reason I'm standing here talking to you about this is the thing that we should have done at the start, and that I have tried to impress on everyone I speak to, is get your baseline established. Measure how much power you use. Measure how much your chicken shed uses. Get someone to tell you whether it's efficient or not. Because it might be that the easiest thing you need to do is install power factor correction. It'll only cost you £3,000 or £4,000. It'll save you tens of thousands of pounds a year. The other thing is, this is running at the moment, and the voltage at Wood End today is 255 volts. So all of this kit here, and all the kit in everyone's farm, is CE marked. It's meant to run at about 210 volts. So I've got 40 volts extra running through it. And that 40 volts, it's like pressure. That's why when you plug your charger in your computer, it runs hot. It's because it's getting 250 volts and it actually only wants 210. So those extra 40 volts can only be expressed as heat. So if your power factor's out, your buzzing lights and your whatever else, that's costing you money. Running at 255 volts when you only need 210 means you're buying 10 or 15% more power than you need. Power today is anything from 30 pence to £1 a kilowatt hour. So if you can save that every moment that it's going. So voltage management and power factor correction are the two things you need, and I'll show you those now. This is power factor correction. I'm going to open it and show you it in a minute, but basically that there says that we're exporting power and our power factor is 1. We're at unity. It cannot be any better. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to show you what's inside it, and then I'm going to turn it back on again. And when it's off, we'll look at the amperage and we'll see how much power is being drawn, because it was around 4. So what power factor correction is a series of capacitors. And what happens is that when the electric motor creates a magnetic field 50 times a second, when it collapses, the reactive power that's created comes into here. So this is like a header tank for a water system. So this is filling and emptying 50 times a second when it's running, and it's taking all that reactive power out of the system. So when I turn it back on again, before it starts to work, you'll see what the actual power factor would be without this, and then once it starts, you'll see what it is when it's 1. But in the meantime, we'll just have a look at that unit here. Now running at 7, between 6 and 7, so the power consumption has gone from 4 to 7. So it's almost doubled. So it's taking nearly double the power. The other way to look at it, if you have a meter like this is the import meter. This red light flashes 5 times for every kilowatt hour. So if you count the flashes there, this is the reactive power, which you still have to pay for. So every time that flashes 5 times, if you're paying 35 pence a kilowatt hour, then every 5 flashes is 35 pence. So we'll just note how flashy it is. And now we're going to turn this machine back on again. And in an ideal world, once it gets back to unity, this one will not flash at all, and that'll just flash when the power is being used on the farm. That's power. That's useful power. That's dead money. And that click was the machine coming back in there just now, and you can see that the KVRs, the reactive power, which is a measure of inefficiency, is now dropped to very little, while the useful power is continuing to be used. The beauty of that useful power that's being used is it's all being generated by the solar cells and wind turbine, and we're not having to buy it in. It's actually exporting a little at the moment. The other thing that we talked about was voltage management. I showed you that we were running at about 255 volts. And all the kit and caboodle we have only needs 210 or thereabouts, and so I'm buying 10 or 15% or 20% even more power than I need. So this unit here is the voltage management system for the chicken shed, and that reduces the voltage from 255 and sets it at 210. You can adjust it slightly up or down, but that's what it is set at, and that's what the machines in the chicken shed need in order to run efficiently. Not to run hot, just to do their job. No wasted power, no extra power bought. And it's designed specifically for the demand in the chicken shed, so that's a bespoke unit. The difference between power factor and voltage management is power factor is only an issue when you're using 3-phase power and you have the reactive power that's created by either having ballast in the inflorescent lights or electric motors that aren't adjusted to address that, where that reactive power is being created. Voltage is just a thing you buy. Looking at it like water pressure. The pressure's too high. All this is doing is reducing the voltage to what you actually need, so you don't buy more power than you need and your kit doesn't run hot. So that's what we put in for the chicken shed, and it's great, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. And these units here, so we've put one of these in every, and I'm not trying to sell you Energisa's kit, but we put one of these in every cottage in every house because it's the same thing. If you're spending £2,000 a year or more now with the energy crisis that we have, if you can cut your consumption by 20%, the difficulty I did my HND and I learned about hens and I learned about grain and weeds and ploughs, and I did a little bit of farm office stuff. But this sort of thing, carbon auditing, efficient energy, none of that was ever mentioned. And it is really difficult to find people that you can rely on that will give you good, sensible technical advice. There's a dearth of them. You want a career, do that. But it's a real hardship. And as farmers, I didn't do a course on auditing, quality assurance, compliance. Our eggs have to, you know, like I said at the start, the carbon audit came about because one of our suppliers demanded that. We have to do the same for our oats. We have to do the same for everything that we produce. They all want auditing, they all want compliance. And it's a huge body of work, and it's vitally important, actually, that you do look at carbon efficiency and energy efficiency. So we are not organic farmers, not by a long chalk. We're regenerative farmers, and what that means for us is we try to do more with less. We try to be efficient as we can. We try to be nutrient efficient. We try to recycle the chicken manure. We use green cover as best we can. We use that to capture the chicken manure, keep it there for the spring, cultivate it in. We try to be energy efficient. We try to be carbon efficient. We try to make the best use of our time and not spend the whole time in the office filling in forms. But regenerative farming to me is not a wacky thing. It's about, I think more for less is the best thing to have in your mind. You want to have lower carbon emissions, lower energy waste. Every piece of energy and efficiency, every kilowatt that saves you money. It saves carbon, it saves money, it makes you efficient, it makes you better people, it makes the world a better place. Just get it done. And I think that vision of marginal improvements, of being efficient and doing it properly is what people need to have in their minds. And the thing that we need to have is we need good advice. We need good, sensible advice. We don't need visioning documents or anything else, because this voltage management, the power factor correction, these systems here, they were being put into houses in the 1940s. They should just be put back in again now. The other things that we have, we've obviously got a standby generator. We use power speed controllers on all of our motors, so we only use as much power as we need. We don't run them at full volt. We have surge protection because we know there's lots of windmills and other stuff out there, and there's the risk of things getting burnt out and broken. And just be sensible. Critical thinking is the answer, not having crazy mad ideas, but just make the best. It's not what you hate, it's what you do with what you hate, whatever it is. That's what matters.